Well, I hope you have been keeping up with the Torah portion reading, because if you have, then for this particular Torah portion, you'll notice that as you start reading that the information should look familiar to you. And the reason why is because our parashah starts out with some familiar instructions. Actually, what we're reading this time is about the contribution, the trumah, that we have read about earlier. In fact, the contribution that we're going to read about in this particular chapter today, chapter 35, actually verses 4 through 29, is a repeat of the instructions of Exodus chapter 25. So 10 chapters ago, we read nearly identical information. However, the difference this time is we learned that the contribution, the trumah, was so great that Moshe actually had to instruct the people to stop giving. That's in chapter 36, verses 3 through 7. In other words, they gave more than enough, and that's pretty good. Also, the major difference between the two accounts is that the former instructions, the former narrative, which covered Parashot Trumah, Tetzaveh, and Kitisa, basically the last three Torah portions up to this one, they detailed the instructions, as can be observed by the fact that the verb tenses were in the future. If you remember, take this contribution, and here's how you're going to build the Mishkan. Whereas the latter, in essence, our current Torah portion, as well as the final portion that we're going to get to coming up in a moment, is, let's see, let me look here real quick. Yeah, Parashat Pekudei. That's also, which is accounts, that's also the work of the Mishkan, but it shows that the work was completed. It shows them building and actually completing the work that had begun in the previous parashah. So really what I'm trying to say is as a broad overview, from Exodus chapter 25 through the end of Exodus, basically from Exodus chapter 25 all the way through Exodus chapter 40, the Mishkan is the central feature. The tabernacle is the central feature. Now, with that view in mind, you might recognize, as I have recognized, that it's unfortunate that the awful golden calf incident in Exodus chapter 32, it's unfortunate that the whole golden calf incident had to even take place. In fact, it really marred the historical narrative that was going along so beautifully. God had instructed the people to give. The people had a heart to give. They wanted the tabernacle built. They contributed to the building of it, and then they set out to put it together, and then the golden calf thing happened. So it's really a shame that we even have to read about that at all. Moreover, we learned last week that the temptation to sin, and of course, let's be honest, we're all going to be tempted from time to time. But the temptation to sin is never so great that we cannot escape. God does not put us in impossible situations. Also, despite the fact that 25,000 people died as a result of the punishment, isn't it fantastic? Let's be positive. Isn't it fantastic to know that the remaining people gave so abundantly that Moshe had to tell them to stop giving? So, the story has a good ending in that sense. They did get the tabernacle built, and they did, in fact, enter into a place where they could have God's presence near them, because as we are going to find out in the book of Vayak'hel, Leviticus, God's presence does move in, as it were, to his noon home. So with the sin and its punishment behind them, the people were now ready to get busy with the task at hand, that is, building Adonai a Mishkan, a tabernacle. The instructions have been given, the contribution has been taken, and now the people are ready to put it together. Moshe had graciously interceded for the people during the golden calf incident, and the Lord, in fact, restrained himself from wiping them out completely. In fact, if God had wiped them out, then he would be violating his promise that he made to Abraham, and that's exactly what Moshe reminded Hashem of when his anger flared up against his people. However, from this point on, the people people would learn to operate under the divine grace and provision of Hashem as performed through the sacrificial system with its Levitical priesthood. They cannot simply expect that Moshe is going to step in and bail them out of hot water every time they get themselves into trouble. God is going to provide a way for them to meet with Him on a more individual basis. Yet the priests are going to be the go-betweens. Moshe is not going to be running the entire show. The high priest is going to be inaugurated, the priests are going to be inaugurated, and then we're going to see that the people are going to be able to approach Hashem through the priests rather than using Moshe as the single leader for everything.